What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Between Two Heads. My name is Jameson, Welbourn. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Addison, DeMoura, and we are here today with our good friend, Ross Kaya Paul of PacificNwRoots. Kaya, thank you so much for taking the time, bro. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I've actually had the pleasure of chopping it up with you on more than one occasion, so I'm well prepared for this interview. And as always, I want to start at the beginning. Not at what you're working on right now. You had an extremely unique childhood. You grew up in the Kitsap Peninsula of Washington with 4 brothers. Your dad was a high school dropout, military vet, and a extremely well-known game fowl breeder.
Yeah, he was a cockfighter.
Unpack that. Talk to us about what life was like as a child growing up there.
Yeah, my dad was a throwback. So he was in the Air Force. All of his brothers had joined the service, kind of like end of World War II, Korean War. So my dad was born in 1937, actually, and so we grew up in a house. In fact, I'm actually trying to buy my family estate right now. It's 14 acres, and the actual original house that my dad himself built. And it was just a different time, and he was a throwback kind of guy, and it was a house full of boys, and he was a hard dude. When he got older, he kind of softened up, but there was just I played football. I was a state champion. We were ranked nationally, and I remember being in a football game in junior high, and we're getting beat by the crosstown rival by a touchdown or whatever, and we come off the field, and my dad grabs me. I mean, like, you get out there, and your team needs you. You need to put this on your shoulders. And they kicked the ball off coming in back from halftime, and I ran the touchdown back, and we never looked back. And it was just, that's how we were raised. We were raised, to put it on your back and bust your ass and work hard. And there was never an excuse. It was just not acceptable in our house. So it was
rural. You were raised rural. I remember in the last interview you had, you said that you didn't know what a hamburger was like till you were 15. I mean, that's something.
Yeah, we ate wild game. My dad was a hunter. I mean, you can see this bear right here. This is the biggest black bear ever taken out of the state of Washington. It was 500 pounds. My mom just passed away at the beginning of the year. Patience, I love you. And she's got a full cougar mount at the house. My brother carried her across the river, and that was because she had the tag, and she shot her own cougar, and they packed it out. And this was just how we were raised. It was part of my dad's passion, but it was also just kind of like how they survived out here. There was this subculture of people that picked slough brush. Slough brush is like this wild bush that grows up here, and you go pick them, and they put them in like floral arrangements. So a lot of the hippies and stuff out here, they would go pick slough brush, and you could take it down to they called it the shed, and you'd get your money that day. And then they go pick oysters off the beach or go salmon fishing. It was like hunter gatherer shit. Mm-hmm. To be honest with you, I was in college, actually wrote a paper on it, and my professor was like, "Yo, come meet me after class. I got to talk to you about this." He was just blown away that people even lived like that still. And then, a lot of people, Alaska's full of folks like that, but this was part of my experience, and then throw in the chicken fighting and professional gambling and just different stuff. It was,
you got to expand on it a little bit.
I learned to keep my mouth shut at a young age. It was like, you're going to school now, Bradley. Don't talk to the kids at school about what happens at home. We had 300, 400 battle cocks in the yard at any given time. Battle cocks are the ones that you're raising to fight. And people would come over and buy them $100 a bird, and they, buy 10, 15, and they take them. And the thing is, different factions would come and buy them, and then they'd take them to the fights, and they'd all go kill each other. But if my dad showed up with his birds, that's where the money went. You know what I mean? He had the deal, and we had movie theater seats up 3 sides, and this, I don't know how big it was, but it was a big barn on our property out there where they called it the Aviators Club, Aviatory Club. And it was chicken fighting, you know, once a month. Cars would come down the back driveway. My older brothers were out there collecting money coming in. It was the first time I ever smelled weed. You know, I was like, oh, that doesn't smell like a cigarette. You know, what's that? That's sweeter. And that was, you know, this was part of how my dad, when he retired from the service, that's how he took care of us. And I learned a lot of the hustle from him, you know, and I learned about breeding from him, and I learned about what you can share and what you can't share. And, you know, when he got busted, I think it was 1982, 83, the ring got infiltrated by undercovers. They passed out marked bills, and my dad was charged basically with like racketeering, professional gambling, and I don't know what they called the cockfighting charge, but essentially he kept his mouth shut, and you know, he took the punishment, you know, and couldn't have, you know, he was a hunter, so he couldn't have guns for a while, which sucked. But Uncle lived right up the street, so we just moved the guns up to Uncle's house, and it was all good. But you know, that was a learning experience. I mean, it was scary when the cops came in and raided the spot, you know, and then fuck, Dad's in trouble, and it was like, you know, it was this traumatic thing in our family. But Dad just went through it like, yeah, fuck it, this is just part of the game, you know, and you know, through that he was rewarded for, you know, holding it down for the other people in the club, and you know, he continued to sell his birds all over the world. And, you know, I got exposed to a lot of world culture, people from Guam, Saipan, Hawaii, Mexico. They were flying out, having dinners, bringing stuff, and, you know, trading things with my dad. And that was pretty cool. You know, that was something very unique, I think, that I got to experience. I have an older brother that actually carries on the tradition. He was Cocker of the Year in 2006 in New Mexico. And then they banned it there. They made it a felony there, and he moved to Kentucky, where it's kind of like the last spot in the States where they still let him do the birding. And you know, he ran it out there. He still got a farm out there, and you know, it's just one of those things. My dad said it reminds me of other, you know, analogies, but you know, he'd say, like, you know, once you get chicken shit under your finger, it's hard to get it out. You know, basically, like, once you get into this cockfighting thing and breeding thing, you know, you're hooked for life. And cannabis is the same way. You know, weed is not addictive, but, you know, growing it is habitual. You know, like, once you're into it and you're doing it, it just pulls you in, and there's just layers that you uncover, and the whole thing becomes, you know, just this whole thing, you know. Yeah, that's where I came from, and that translates, and, you know, maybe people really understand, you know, what I'm about. My wife, when she met me, she was like, "Oh, you grow weed and you fight chicken. You like my dad, you know?" And was in. A little Hawaiian. I learned to say her name in Hawaiian. It was like, "Pow," you know.
What are you?
I know you were a big athlete growing up, and I think it was actually an injury from sports that ultimately led you to really getting into cannabis. Do you want to talk a little bit about that experience and what happened there?
Yeah, I was a good kid, man. I really was. I didn't mess around much at all. Yeah, I've been stoned twice in high school, you know, recreationally. And I was a big time football player. I was a tailback and defensive corner. I played both ways, and we were in one of the biggest high schools in the country, the biggest west of the Mississippi, at South Kitsap High School. We had almost 4,000 kids there. This is in the mid '90s, and incredible football program. And I had started playing when I was 6. My older brothers had played, so like, this was like, you know, my thing. And my junior year, I got knocked out in a football game, and I at halftime I kind of threatened the trainer, begged him to let me back in, and he did, and I got knocked out again. And back then we really didn't know, right? Like, I remember Junior Seau committing suicide, and people were like, "Man, what was up with him?" And it was head injuries, you know, but we didn't have that correlation. My mom knew. So after I had this head injury my junior year, they had me on, you know, I had encephalitis. My brain swelled for 6 months, and they had me on, you know, high doses of Advil, and then once the brain swelling came down, I had all these other adverse effects. You know, I was depressed, and I knew that I didn't need to be depressed. I had a great life. I was happy. But it was just this side effect from the traumatic brain injury. And so they had put me on Zoloft, Paxil, all these different antidepressant drugs, and just kind of fucked with me a bit. And so when I went off to college, I made it to my senior year, and when I went off to college, I started smoking herb kind of daily, and I got off of the psych meds. The cannabis made me feel better, and so I didn't have to take any of which the other stuff wasn't really working. They kept trying different things, and that doesn't work, this doesn't work. But the herbs worked, and shortly after the herbs, I was into mushrooms, and I didn't realize the connection now, but now we know, right? Like the mushrooms help to fix neurological issues in your brain, and it did. It fucking fixed me, and I kind of owe my life to it. So that was really what led me down that path. It wasn't just me getting baked for fun, it was like I ran into it, and it was healing right from the start, and as my life progressed, and I learned, I'd always listen to Bob Marley, and then this medicine is helping me out. It kind of just changed, it shifted my perspective of like what the herb really is, and it wasn't just like something like alcohol, just to be base and party with, like there was something else here deeper. And I've just been unraveling that ball of string for the last 25, 30 years. And it's pretty cool. It's led me down this path, and here I am. So
that's incredible, man. I want to continue with the chronology. So, I mean, I believe you got into cannabis fairly quickly from when you were first experiencing it when you were off in college to when you started moving weight. And so I just want to learn a little bit about that, and where you're how that progressed and what that looked like.
Yeah, so it was fall of 95, because I had graduated high school in 95. So fall of 95, I'm up at Western Washington University, and it's like October, like we're maybe 6 weeks into school. I start smoking weed like daily, and it's kind of fixing me. And the neighbors are like, "Man, come over anytime. You're funny when you get baked." And I was funny for about 2 weeks, and then I'm like, "All right, dude, you got to buy your own weed. Your turn to buy the eighth." So I'm like, "All right." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, what's an eighth?" Right? Like, an eighth? An eighth of what? And he said, "Well, an eighth of an ounce." I said, "Okay, well, how much is an eighth? $40. Okay, well, how much is an ounce? 250. And I do the math. I'm like, "Why don't we just buy an ounce?" And they said, "Okay, sure. Yeah, buy an ounce. Buy it." So I bought an ounce, and then I'm sitting there, we're getting stoned. I'm like, "Well, they sell more than an ounce?" Yeah, you can get a quarter pound, or you can get a pound. Well, how much is that? And the next week I got a government check. They gave me, I had filed for grants for school. So here comes this $2,000 check. And at the time you could get a pound of Canadian weed pretty cheap, So I called my cousin that was also up there, and I'm like, "Hey, you know anybody I can get some weed?" And she was like, yeah, I got you. So I bought my first half pound, and I broke it down. And like back then it was like, you break down the whole motherfucking thing. I had 9/8 per ounce, and the thing was a little heavy. So I had a little bit of head stash over here. And then I hustled it. I started hustling at the dorms, and everywhere I went, I had weed on me. And pretty soon it was like, I couldn't even go to class because I'm just fucking driving around Bellingham slanging weed, and you show up at somebody's house, you got to sit down, you got to smoke a bowl with them, sell them the thing and flip it out, like it was the whole thing. And I was hooked, and then I found customers to buy more, and it was pretty soon I'm buying big packs, and the game expanded, and it's really cool. There's actually some folks still in the game out here that, my first hookup, we call him the chef. He's part of an operation in Seattle still. There's people that go back that far that are still in this motherfucker, which is really cool. But that's really where it started, was that $2,000 check they sent me, after my neighbors told me I had to buy the next eighth. I'm like, well, how about I buy a bunch, and I'll sell you guys eighths. And it took off from there.
I've heard you in other interviews say that you didn't realize how special what was happening in Bellingham was until you left and went to other places in the state and realized the access and the environment that existed in Bellingham, at least at that time. Can you like talk about, you know, what was making that area so special? Like, was it the pure geographic location in relation to Canada, or were there more things going on there?
So at this time, understand, there was California weed was all going east. None of that shit came up to Oregon or Washington. We never saw California weed. There was so much pressure pre 9/11, because after 9/11 they shut that fucking border down. It was done. It was a wrap. All those motherfuckers moved over here in mass and started buying up neighbors. It was a whole different thing. Pre 9/11 though, there was so much pressure coming down from Canada. Marcus and his people were up there pushing so much weed down on us. We never saw anything from California. Having said that, and you could get good Canadian herbs. A lot of it was coming down via bikers. The Asian folks kind of took that over post 9/11. There was actually a little bit of a war going on up in Vancouver between Vietnamese nationalists and Chinese nationals in Vancouver. There was actually a big war in the late 90s that I could talk about a little bit. But pre 9/11, there was a lot of pressure coming down. And the weed was good, but there was a lot of work. And so in Washington, in Oregon, you know, there was no outdoor growing. It was all indoor. Okay. And our power, you know, it's like pennies, right? 5 cents a kilowatt, 6 cents a kilowatt. California is paying 25, 30 cents a kilowatt, right? So we're crushing the whole world on indoor production at this time. Vancouver in Canada is crushing. They're putting out massive amounts of actually indoor weed. That's what all that stuff coming down was, massive amounts of big indoor grows. California was still pushing a lot of sun grown, right? But up in our area, it was, and the market reflected that, right? So you were either getting the beasters, the work, right? The Canadian buds, or you were getting locals. And locals was all those people that were growing in their basements, all the indoor grows in Washington, and there was a lot. And in Bellingham at that time, it's a college town, so the demand is super high. And I mean, the Crips were commanding 4,000, 4,200 a fucking pound, man. You could make money. Like, we were stealing lights off of shit off campus, just growing fucking anywhere we could, because you could make killer fucking money, especially as a 20-year-old fucking kid. You kidding me? I could pull down 4 fucking lights and make $20,000 fucking dollars in a couple months. Fuck out of here, right? So everybody was trying to grow, and there was a lot of really good weed, and the diversity of it was absolutely nuts. And I used to wonder, like, man, I wonder if Seattle's got this. And Seattle had some good shit, but Bellingham, for whatever reason, to me, had just a more diverse palette of flavors. And again, I think that was because a lot of those people had connections with Canadians that were doing stuff, and that border was really porous at the time. So there was a lot of exchange going on there, right? In the States, it kind of wasn't so much like that. So I maybe that's kind of what it was, but it really was a special time, and I would even see hash up there. Like, in those days, you didn't see much hash. There was, no rosin, forget 6-star. All old world, all traditional hash. The first guy that introduced me to hash was a guy named Bubs, and big, huge fucking temple balls, like 5-pound temple balls like this, and then pressed bricks of fucking, Afghan or Amsterdam stamped shit, that was really nice. And it was like $15-20 a gram, but you bought it all when you seen it, because you might not see it for fucking 2 more years,
Sick. When did you?
I didn't want to go off on that tangent. I'm trying to keep it chronological.
It's fine. When did you see that hash from Bubs?
That was like 97,
97,
96, 97, 98. But Bubs was the first one that taught me how to like roll the joint with the crutch, and he called it the California crutch. I said, "Why do you call it the California crutch?" He said, "Because I learned it in the California penal system."
How were you affected by the gang wars that were so prevalent in British Columbia in the 90s? That, like, it's interesting that you have knowledge of that. Like, was that something that dramatically affected the market below, or was the supply always constant and steady from one side or another?
So during that stretch there in the late 90s, my supplies were actually coming from bikers. And I had a couple different sources that were working those deals, and some of my friends were actually like protecting the trails that some of these loads were being brought across on. And so that was more of my connection, and that was a higher grade product. Okay. The stuff that was happening between the Chinese and the Vietnamese up there was, I wasn't seeing so much of that and playing with that. That came into play a little bit later, right? Because what happens is they kind of won the deal up there. The Vietnamese, I guess, to my understanding, they kind of won that battle. And then they were running things for just a really short period of time before 9/11 happened. And at that point, a lot of those Vietnamese guys jumped the border and they came down to the United States. And like, I was in Tacoma at the time, and they bought up fucking whole neighborhoods in Hilltop. And like they said at the time, like every third or every fourth house in Hilltop was a grow house. And I think up in Canada, in Vancouver, it was literally like 3 out of 4 were fucking
it was crazy.
Bananas, right? So when that happened, I immediately got introduced into that network. I had friends in Tacoma that were, gang affiliated, and they were pushing other things, and they, they said, and they knew I was the weed guy. I didn't want anything to do with anything else. But I liked Weed Connects, put me in touch, and they put me in touch with the dudes. And then a lot of the guys followed me, right? So they were doing other things, and then they saw that I was pushing this herb and making just as much money as they were fucking with hard stuff. And so they're like, oh, this is interesting. Let's do what he's doing. And then they kind of followed behind me, and that whole relationship with them really developed for me, like 1999 through 2004, 2005. That's when I was heavily involved with the Vietnamese guys, and at first it was local stuff, and we were pushing a lot of stuff locally. People were coming from other places, and we just held it down locally and pushed it out. And then as those guys got established down here, it became, what city do you want to go to? And they would have it on deck. They had warehouses in every fucking city. And I just had to fly in the clientele, and they made it really easy. I could fly into a city, and connect the links, and boom, and be out, and I think a lot of what kept me safe and kept me alive was I was very, very careful about keeping the supplier and the customer completely fucking separate. The suppliers were always on me. Oh, we'll make it easy for you. You don't even have to go. Just tell us who it is, and we'll go meet with them. I never gave not a single person would I give up, because that's what kept me alive. If they could cut me out, I'd be dead. They'd kidnapped me before, over some bullshit, and the guy actually got in big trouble for doing it, and I got his spot in the organization. They fired him or demoted him, I guess, and I got his spot. And it was really my choice whether he was breathing or not. I chose to take his spot instead of that other option. And but that was just a different time, man. It was a different era.
For sure. At what point? Let me ask.
Even like medical shit going on. You know what I mean? There was no medical cover. This was straight up fucking street shit.
When did you see that Afghani that you ended up ultimately modeling the coffee after? Like, at what point did you first see that Afghani?
Oh, that was like 97.
97 and
97, and the hookup was, we called them the County Boys. My buddy, I actually found a postcard from them the other day. These two dudes were giants, and the one guy went to my high school, and he was a little slow, but a big dude. He reminded me like Baby Huey, and they had went to Costa Rica on a vacation, and they sent me postcards. It was hilarious postcards, but those guys had the Biker Connect. And they started showing up with this Afghani hash plant, and literally we go over to the house, and it was coming in metal ammo cases, right? The little the metal boxes, and they were just fucking packed with weed. And you pull them out, and there's these big fucking cannon colas of this Afghani hash plant, man. It was so fucking good, and I made so much money. Like, the guys would come up from Tacoma and Seattle, man, and I just crush them. You know what I mean? I was putting $1,000 on every pack, and they were buying them 5, 10 at a time, and they couldn't get enough of it. It was really killer herb. And when that connection went away, I just thought I'd never see it again. It's like the Northern Lights that I had seen up there, or the Pez. Some of this stuff I've just never seen it again, and I wouldn't know where to start to breed the Pez, or and to recreate it. But I knew with this Afghani hash plant that if I had some Afghani shit, that I could breed that together and maybe find it. And that's kind of how the coffee came about. I had sourced the Alien OG, which had Alien Kush in it, or the Alien Technology, which is an Afghani, and the Alien Kush. They both had the Alien Tech in it. And I didn't really care much for either of the mom or the dad, or the sister to the dad. But I crossed them together, hoping that I would hit that recessive streak of genetics and find that in there. And I did. And here's the thing is I'd grown out 100 plants in that test room, right? But there was 10 different strains. There was only 10 of that particular cross. And they all look beautiful. I got great pictures of them. And as I cut them down, the smell wasn't there. The last one I cut, as soon as I cut it, I could smell it. And it took me immediately back to the midnight. I was like, oh shit, that's it. And I cut it down and I hung it. And when I got it hung and dried, I had set it in this box. And I remember waking up that morning and coming out of my bedroom, and like the whole house just emanating this smell. And I was just fucking like in heaven. And I had the original name for it was my Happy Affy. I was like, this is my Happy Affy, and I took it to the store, and the dude's like, fuck, this smells like coffee. And I'm like, oh, that's even better. We're going with coffee. So that's where it got its name. Can't remember the dude's name that had the rec store up there, or the dispensary, but he was like, man, this is Guy's coffee. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I like that. It works with Seattle. It works, Yeah. That's
so
the cave.
That's so cool. So I want to back up a little bit, and I want to know, when did you start growing? Like because you were brokering things before you started cultivating. Like, who was it that introduced you to cultivation?
So the guys that were getting me stoned, my neighbors, they actually had a Phototron. They had ordered a Phototron, and we were growing the Phototron in the closet. And I was like, fuck, that's cool. But I'm like, I'm not going to buy a Phototron. So that's when we went and stole some lights from campus and just converted, like, we took dressers apart and fucking made the dressers into like little homemade Phototrons. It didn't work great. So that was in the fall of 95. The spring of 96, we got seeds and went and planted them up on Blanchard Hill, which is this biking hill, little mini mountain. We found a creek and did an outdoor crop, and it was absolutely beautiful. And we cut it down and we stuffed it in burlap sacks and drove it home and hung it in the attic and ruined it. Like, dried it to all fucking hell and just turned it to dust. And at that point I was like, fuck it, I'm turned off to this now. Like, we did all this work and got nothing out of it. So at that point I was just hustling.
Yeah.
And I probably didn't grow again until like 2001. And I've been moving weed for so long, and you're pushing these $4,000 packs, $3,600 packs, and I'm taking, $200, $300 off of each one, and I'm passing along $3,000, $3,500. I'm like, fuck, man, I need that money, right? And my cousin introduced me to a buddy of his, this cowboy, and I started growing, and like indoor. And so I think I did my first indoor out at that cabin. I'm going to say it was like 2002. It was a hydroponic setup. My buddy he was going to Hawaii, and he let me use his little cabin, and I had 5,600 watts in there, and I did a 5-gallon deep water culture recirculating system. And he basically helped me set it up, and then he went to Hawaii, and I'm like on the phone with him, like, okay, what do I do next? And later he comes back and he walks in the room. He's like, what the fuck? And I thought I fucked it up, bro, but I'd grown 12 pounds off of fucking 5,600 watts my first fucking go round. And this dude was beside himself, like, holy shit, And so we did the trim marathon. I got all the weed hanging. It's like 6 days in and reeking, and I'm sitting on the couch, and my fucking heart drops out my ass, and I'm thinking, fuck, dude. And I go answer the door, and it's this little old lady, and she's like, hi, I'm a real estate agent. You want to sell your house? And I was like, get the fuck out of here. We got the weed down and sold it, and we went out to dinner, man. We had a $2,000 dinner. Like, this crop was worth, fucking, at the time it was 4,000 pounds. So, it was worth almost 50 fucking grand, And after that, I was hooked. I went and found another place to rent, bought some more lights, and then it was, I think it kind of the peak of it. I had 12 or 10, 3 different houses, 12 lights in each house. and I ran that all through the medical times.
Do you remember what that first cultivar was?
Yeah, Orange Crush.
Orange Crush.
Orange
That's
Crush.
great.
Yeah. And then we called it the Orange Cock because you couldn't grow it too loud. You'd get caught if you were growing it. And then my first like seed crop that we did was much later. It was 2009, 2010. I met Mel and he was like, bro, pollinate those plants. It'll take you 5 years to sell all the seeds, but your crop will be worth more, and you'll be started on this seed thing. And
so
talk me into it.
Mel is Lemon Hoko, who's an OG in the Washington cannabis space that you connected with on a forum called Pacific Green Northwest. Is that
Northwest Green Thumb?
Northwest Green Thumb. Okay. And so, talk to me about, was it when Mel came to you and pushed you to get into breeding, was it because he knew about your upbringing and your father, or your connection to the plant, or was he just pushing everyone to breed, or how did that work?
No, on the forum, again, I definitely not in Kevin Jodry's, like, on his level. He's on his own level, but I had a similar kind of path where I was moving a lot and seeing a lot and had a lot of connections. So back then I had a lot of really dope cuts. I had some cool shit that nobody else had, and I had access to it. And I was bringing things into the state that, I brought up cherry pie. I brought up Chem 4. There was stuff that people hadn't seen up here. And I beat him in a competition. And afterwards we went and met and smoked, and just in that conversation, he breeds dogs, and I was telling him about my dad, and he was like, you got all these good fucking cuts. You should start breeding. And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, no, really, you should. In fact, I've got this fucking great alien Kush male. I want to share it with you. You can start your breeding project with this. And he gave me that first male, and that got me hooked.
Was that first breeding project for you, or was that intended to be for others as well?
It was for everybody. I mean, I had some huge fucking plants out on my deck, and back then what I would do is I would run like a simultaneous crop. So I would have my indoor in the garage, and then I had an outdoor out on my deck, and I had timed it perfectly for like 3 years in a row, where I'd crop my indoor like September, and then instead of refilling it, I'd bring in the outdoor inside, and then I'd finish it in a month, and I kind of get a 2-hit real quick there, right? Because you couldn't finish your plants outdoors here because it rains. And Mel seen him, and he was like, man, you should, that's all your good shit, right? I'm like, yeah. He was like, man, you should, I got this plant here, it's ready. You should pollinate it, and you'll actually, triple your money, quadruple your money. It's gonna take you 4 or 5 years to get to it, but you can start the building blocks. And so we did. And I mean, I had 10,000 fucking seeds, but that allowed me of each fucking strain, right? Mm-hmm. That allowed me to give a lot away. Man, I must have sent 1,000 packs to Jamaica just on GP, just to a friend. Here, take care of the people, and just started giving stuff away. And I ran everything and tested it myself before I put it out. So I made all those crosses, and then I did a full build out at my space, redesigned, took all the hydro shit out, switched over to organic soil, because that was going to give me a more even representation of what these plants wanted. And I took pictures every week, and I journaled it, and it was all on Northwest Green Thumb. And I modeled that after Alien, who at the time had set the breeding world on fire with his alien crosses and the way that he documented everything. Like, it was very methodical, and I was like, man, I'm gonna do the same thing, right? Because back then you'd grab the book and look and go, oh, the seed bank book, it's got this one, and I want that one. You buy it, and it's not the same, Yeah. You had no fucking clue. And as I got into it, I realized this whole fucking thing is wanky. Like, what in the fuck are these guys doing? This is all bullshit. They're all bullshitting people. And it wasn't until Alien kind of showed them, like, this is how this fucking works. Look, these are all the varieties you're going to have. This is the different phenotypical expressions you're going to have. You're going to get some of these and some of those. And these, like, the old seed game was not showing any of that shit. They weren't showing fucking take a picture
of the cornerstone breeding, where they would like leave out, they would use whatever it was that they wanted you to see in the picture, and then cross that into like a G13 or something, and then sell you those seeds. So now you couldn't even go back and recreate, you know, the real gem that they had, which is called cornerstone. It's like a weird, it's like a Dutch fucking technique, man, which is crazy. But
yeah, you know, and I just felt like we could do this better. You know,
Yeah.
the plant deserves better. You know, like
Was
people, you can do all that shit for yourself. It's gonna work. But
Yeah.
at some point, are you doing this for your fucking self or your plant? You know, I got felt ashamed. Dragonfly Earth Medicine lady, Kelly, she made me feel ashamed of myself one time at this Living Soil Symposium. Not like pointing it at me, but she was just talking about how we deal with the plant. And I really self-reflected in that moment and thought, man, you fucking A. You know, what am I doing? This isn't about me. This is about the thing that I'm working with and this synergistic energy. And if I just keep taking and doing for me with it, that's not going to lead me where we need to go. You know, so change the thing. Be more honest about it. Let people know what's coming down the pipe. I try to educate people. Like, if you're buying seeds, know what the fuck you're buying the seed for. Don't buy a fucking autoflower to run inside. You don't need to do that. If you're looking for a superior mom and you're going to clone it down, you don't need fucking fem seed. You know, like there's different things that you buy things for, and I think that this kind of knowledge was just shuttered, and people didn't even talk about it. You know, and now it's out in the open, and people are making better informed decisions, and you can see the cannabis space is filling up with better varieties, and the hash is getting better, and the flowers getting freakier, and it's all cool, right? Like that's where it should be going. So
yeah, 100%. Was the first breeding project that was prompted by Mel the inception of Pacific Northwest Roots, or was Pacific Northwest Roots be prior to that?
No, I mean we had branded our flowers. I saw a need for that at the beginning of dispensaries and brick and mortars. I saw that coming right away, and so we branded 2010. 2010, when stores started opening up, anything that went into the shops, I had a sticker on it, and we were promoting that because that was like 10 guys come in with the same fucking strain. You know, how do they know which one's different? And I had them within a year. People would come in and they'd say, "Is that Roots Blue Dream?" No, I don't want it. I'll wait for the Roots one. You know, and they actually called it Snoop Stream because I sold some to Snoop Dogg. It's a whole fun story, but. Yeah, you know, that was.
How'd you get connected with Snoop? Was it through a connection, or was it a direct connection?
Man, one of my street buddies from T-Town days called me up one night, and he's like, "Oh, I'm down here in Portland, and I'm gonna go smoke Snoop Dogg out." And I'm like, "No shit." He's like, "Yeah, man, his bus is parked out in front of the hotel." And I'm like, "Well, he's not gonna smoke out with me." "Yeah, man, I'm gonna take him your shit." Dude called me back like an hour later, you know, and he's like, "Hey, they're coming up to Seattle and he needs more." I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" So he had went outside, bum rushed the big bouncer guy, Tiny. Tiny's not tiny. Tiny's fucking enormous. Bum rushed Tiny, you know, and he's like, "Tiny, I got to get this weeds for Snoop," you know, and Tiny's like, "I'm not fucking taking your weed on this. Snoop will fire me. Fuck out of here," you know. And my buddy is very persuasive. He's a street dude, you know, and he's like, "Listen, motherfucker, like, he can be mad at you if you don't show him this weed." So the guy takes the weed on the bus. He says 5 minutes later, he comes back down. Yeah, Snoop, like, you got any more, you know? So when they left Portland, they came up to Seattle, and they had called his road manager called and said, "Hey man, we need a quarter pound of that weed." And I said, "Cool." And I didn't have wheels at the time, and my daughter was just 3 months old. My old lady was working, so I called my neighbor Doggo. I'm like, "Doggo, let me borrow your car, bro." So Doggo comes over, lets me borrow his car with the baby seat in back, and I throw in the QP, and I drive up to Soto in Seattle and meet this cat in the parking lot and sell him the QP. And he gives me tickets for the show the next night, and I go home thinking, "Wow, that was fucking cool. Would have been nice if I got to meet Snoop." And then my phone rings the next day at like 11 in the morning, like, "Hey man, we need you to bring up another quarter pound. That shit's killer," you know. I'm like, "Fucking A, all right," you know. So I got a babysitter that night, and my wife and I went up, and she got pictures with Snoop, and yeah, we took him another quarter pound, and I mean, $1,000 QP is a blue dream, baby.
yes, you got.
That's awesome, man. I want to ask you about 2015. You're competing in a cup, and Steep Hill actually tests your material, and it comes back extremely high, and you win you win strongest strain of the year for High Times. Like how big was that for the Roots brand and for you? And you know, I'd love to hear if Addy, do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
It was actually, I think it was actually 2014.
Mhm.
And it was the last High Times Cup they had in Seattle, and they moved it to Everett. And there was actually some weird stuff going on with that whole thing. And we kind of got the year before, Cali Connection had sponsored it, and us local guys were kind of pissed off that they had the High Times Cup in Seattle with these California guys running around acting like they own the place. Like I was highly offended. I'm gonna be honest. Like I was ready to grab somebody off the street, you know. And so we were gonna do this party thing, and we thought we had the okay through Exotic Mike was working with his connect at High Times. And we set up this party, and then High Times was like, "Oh no, you can't do that," and threatened to sue us. And we're like, "Well, fuck you. We got a letter from your guys saying we can do it. So now what, motherfuckers?" And they're like, "Oh, so sorry. Do you want to sponsor the event?" And they made us a stupid deal, super cheap. And so we got to sponsor the event. And that year, Mike entered in a whole bunch of flowers. That was the first year that Cuban entered. He entered in under the Roots banner. Mel had called me and said, "Hey, this kid's got some good hash. He wants to enter." And you got like, it was $1,000 if you weren't on the deal. It was 500, so we could save him some money. We were all broke. So Cuban entered under the Roots banner. That was the Miami Haze. And I entered in the coffee flower, and I ended up taking third place for the coffee flower. And I actually submitted the wrong fucking sample jar. I had like the good jar, and then I had some of the smalls, and I accidentally sent the smalls in. And I remember telling Exotic Mike, like, "Man, I fucked up. I sent him the wrong fucking jar," and I won anyways, so that was cool. But yeah, Steep Hill tested it, and it was 31%. And that was, you know, that was really cool at the time. And when they printed it in the magazine, it said something else, and I called them on it, and they never fixed it. But, you know, I've had a lot of the BXs test, and then they all come in at 30% plus.
Yeah,
it's very high in myrcene. Yeah, it's a good plant.
And I mean, that was back when there were no 30% coming out like that. You know, like this whole
remember
5% is a very new thing. Like,
well, remember this though. Coffee's mom was Alien OG. Okay, Alien OG at the time had scored the highest test in California, 28%. Just, you know, 6 months before that, it was the number one. That's why I grabbed the cut when I went down to Berkeley.
Yeah,
it was a 28.
This is all THCA, not Delta 9 THC. So that was the other thing, is that, you know, still a 31% is like 22% THC or something like that. It's like, it's very fucking high, which is really like the ceiling of where, if you think of it, 22%, I think, based on the laws of absolute, is like the maximum that in Delta 9 THC that a flower can really be, because you're encroaching on 25% of all the matter that you're looking at it. So 25% of a gram would be pure THC. And that's where you're working back from. So 22% is like the max that the plant can produce. If it's going to produce terpenes, if it's going to produce other stuff, that's the max. I mean, if it doesn't produce any terpenes at all, then it could probably jump up a little more. But like, I think they figured out that like 33% is the highest THC percentage. 1/3 of it can be THCA total, because there's also going to be like other acidics like THC or CBG, CBDA, all these other acidics that'll be there. So no, that's like the max. But that was still, I think that's still like the highest that I've ever seen is like 31, like pushing 32%. So like, and that was fire. It's stuff. It still is the hash. When I got to smoke the hash, I was like, oh, it was so good. So
well, you're gonna be stoked because we put aside 2 ounces of that. That's what we're bringing down for our hash entry.
Good Lord.
so was that like a polarizing moment where you feel as though it was sort of a catalyst for your brand and awareness, or not so much that 31%? Like, I know there seems like there were some issues with that competition and also getting the proper recognition. So, I mean, how did that shake out for you?
For me, it was really cool. I think that it propelled me internally, you know, there's actually been a couple times when I've really thought, you know, do I just keep doing this or what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it seems like when I get to that point, ding, you know, they Most High hits that thing. Yeah, you're in here, dude. Come on, you're all right. You know what I mean? Like, I'm dead serious. There's been some time people talk shit, man. You've been in it too long. You know, you're over the hill. You played out, whatever. You know, you fell off. I love that one. My buddy, Genetics, told me I fell off, and I came back and I swept the High Times Dope Cup in 2018. You know, 6 months after he said it, and I called him and I laughed at him, and we're buddies, so it's no hard feelings, but. You know, like there's definitely been some times where it's like, man, I don't know, and I don't know that really propelled anything business wise. You know, I'm not the loudest. I get on some of these podcasts lately, but I'm not a hype beast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's just not me. You know, and if I was the hype beast that Burner was, we'd already burnt the motherfucking world down with this movement. You know, but I don't think that's what Most High has planned for me. You know, yeah. I think Most High wants a slow burn from Ross Kaya. You know,
yes.
I think he wants me to light it up nice and easy and keep this thing going. And then all the other little stars gonna pop up and burn out. You know, but this movement is what's really, you know, the Hardical movement. You know, in the sense of how you're cultivating and how you're partnering with people and everything that we're doing. It's not that. Fancy thing, you know, and maybe that has slowed down our progress or whatever. But that's our path, and we're okay with that, you know.
100%. So we jump forward a bit, but I think it was the right way. But I want to talk about hash, and I know you've been involved in making, you know, temple balls for you know, a long time. But when did Fresh Frozen come into the picture? Or actually, let's take it back farther than that. Is when did you like enter the market with a hash with an extract, a solventless extract, and what was it?
So I started making hash. I made my first batch of hash. I went to Home Depot and I rented one of those fucking industrial paint mixers. And I had a 50-gallon drum. And I got up on top of the board across it, filled with ice and weed, and I turned that fucker on. And it just flew everything everywhere. But like the first indoor grow we had, we were throwing out the trim. Like, make no mistake about it. It was get everything the fuck out of the house and get rid of it. And it wasn't till like I got turned on to hash, like from Bubba, right? Like, oh man, this stuff smells good. And then Bubble Man was really like, oh, you can make this stuff, you know, and he was the first one putting out those kind of tools. And I want to say I washed my first batch of water hash like 2003-ish. And it was, you know, catch it in the bottom because you thought that was the best grade. And then I would put it out on a pan and we just dry it on top. I'd set it on top of my T5s. And I let it dry slow over like 5-day period. And it would become this really beautiful, you know, greasy, and you could kind of peel it up. And that was really like my introduction to hash making. And I would say I did that for a year or two, and then BHO kind of came along. And I thought, oh, that looks pretty cool, right? So I got some tubes and I tried to blast some BHO. And I had a little mishap. You know, they had this little plastic stopper you put in. And the pressure had built up. And when I released on the can of butane, it popped the thing and blew all the weed on my face and into the pan. And it scared me, you know, because I was like, man, that could have blown me all the shit. I was doing it outside, so probably not. But, you know, at that point, I was just like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm just going to stick with, you know, making water hash. And 2 years later, the stores didn't want water hash. You know, they were on a BHO because it was dabbable. And that's when people like Nicotine and Matt Rise and these folks were really pushing to create dabbable hash. And that was a process. That was a learned process. And we all were making mistakes. But I was in communication with those guys and we were sharing tech and trying to figure out that process. You know, the GOAT taught me about cool bots. And, you know, we were just assimilating all this stuff. And now it's like, oh, it always existed. No, it didn't. Like we had to figure this shit out. And that was really driven by the desire to have dabbable hash, clean dabbable hash. So I think we owe BHO a debt of gratitude, because I will say that BHO was like the first dabbable thing, and I remember, first time I dabbed BHO, I was like, oh my God, what the fuck is that smell? I knew I was doing something wrong. I knew this could not be fucking good for me. It crossed my fucking eyes. Like, I was like, how the fuck am I going to get home? Like, it fucked me up. Right. But once you realize, fuck, I can do this without that other shit, now we're fucking off and running, and that was really kind of the impetus. But you got to give them the credit for creating that kind of thing, and again, it takes it back to our primal ancestors, right? They heated up the thing and dropped the fucking resin on there and hotboxed the tent or whatever the fuck they were doing. And that's kind of what we're doing. But getting back to that, where it's becoming an art form, and you're getting it cleaner, and you're finding out how to make your hash cleaner. Our recreational hash, it's scoring 10 points higher than everybody else's on the market. Why do you think that is? I got good strains. That might be a little bit, but our process. We don't have the contaminant because we're extra fucking careful. And if that's what was driving us to create dabbable hash, just keep going on that path. And that's kind of what was driving the whole thing.
You were really on the forefront. Like, it wasn't even the soil grown video that put you and so many people set them on their journey. I mean, can you talk a little bit about your relationship with Straight Concentrates and the Clear Scientist, and the early day R&D that you were doing with them?
So Straight Concentrate guy this was like when flower rosin was first hitting, right? No, there's still hash, there's still BHO, but there was no rosin.
Yeah.
Hash rosin. And if there was, it wasn't like it was even thought of as being like something you could do to make money off of. It was like head stash shit because it cost you too much. And then these guys started pressing flowers, and the Straight guy is really, really smart about the way his mind works, and he created these big presses, and it was like waterfalls of hash, which was really crazy. And so I hit him up, and I was like, dude, let's bring that press over here and let's go. And we cut down a 12 lighter and pressed that whole fucking room out. And I guarantee you, I was the first one to cut down an entire indoor room like that and press it out. And at the time, flower rosin was $60 a gram. And that room went from being typically a $20,000, $30,000 room to being a $60,000, $70,000 room like that. And we harvested it and got it done fucking fast, and it was gone as soon as I had finished it. And
how long did flower rosin stay prevalent in the Washington market before you saw that dip?
So I sold that shit in like September, and then I dipped out to Hawaii in October. It was a big fat bag, and I was stoked. I'm like, I'm getting out of here for the winter. And by the time I got back from Hawaii, like in December, the price had dropped from $60 a gram down to 30. And because everybody jumped on it.
Yeah.
And then it was like anything, right? The first people that are doing it and doing it right, it's fucking awesome. And then everybody that wants to run in and copycat it, they fuck it all up. It's fucking terrible, and nobody wants it anymore because they've soiled the name. They fucking ruined it. Blue Dream, right? It's a beautiful fucking plant. You grow it right, it's a killer. Everybody fucking grew it. Everybody grew it like shit. They pumped it all out in mass, and now nobody fucking wants it. So that's what happened to flower rosin.
Yeah.
And at the same time, us guys that had made 6-star and were figuring out like, fuck, we're gonna squish this stuff. Awesome, And then that's when I think the thing switched from flower rosin to hash rosin.
Yeah.
And it was commanding a price that allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
Right. If you were getting less than what you could get for flowers, this thing kind of did this, like the flower market is just kind of going, right. And then the hash value is just doing this, right. And they kind of intersect, and it's like, okay, now it's worth doing that. And that's, we changed our whole production model.
Yeah. 100%. So what do you remember the first wash of fresh material that you did? Like, was that a something that was seared into your head?
You know what seared into my head is the first time I tried to squish trim. Oh, it's fucking horrible. We had this beautiful crop. We'd separate the flowers, they trim it. I got this pile of trim, and I'm like, I'm not doing that BHO. So I have this kid, I pay this kid to squish 5 grams into these pouches, and he's got a fucking mountain of these little 5-gram pouches. And it's time to squish it, and he squishes it, bro, and this black oil comes out, and I'm like, motherfucker. It was just black as night. It was terrible. I'm trying to think. Fresh frozen though.
I've gotten. I mean, let me ask you this: like, as compared, like, I'm focusing on your transition from washing cured material into washing fresh frozen material, and I want to ask you. I remember you mentioning a blueberry that you said, in your opinion, would wash, that you remember washing better as a cured lot than it washed as a fresh lot. Is that the only cultivar that in your mind stands out as something that is better cured than fresh?
No, I think there's plenty of them out there. I think solventless mindset would totally agree. You know, and I think people kind of get hung up with, oh, it's not a washer. Well, it could be a washer if you dry it. You know, different plants, different resins, different situations, different scenarios. I was actually just on the phone this morning with my guy, Do Work Be Mellow. He's got a farm over in Eastern Washington, and we're going to dry down some stuff and do things differently because that's what the situation calls for. And I think that's okay. You know, I think the whole fresh frozen thing, besides the terps, right? Like, we wanted unstable resin, right? So once you dry the plant and cure it, now that it's more stable, right? The resin's more stable. The hash is going to be more stable. More stable maybe means less melty, less volatile. We want it melty and gooey, and we want to play with the shit, right? And if you do a cured stuff, it doesn't have that consistency and texture.
Yeah.
Layer on top of that, right? And maybe even more importantly, the terp retention, right? So people really like that fresh expression, right? Like, oh man, that tastes just like it smelled when it was on the vine, which you can lose. Yeah. On the other hand, some cultivars get better when they dry. You know, some cultivars, the expression that comes out of them once it's dried is different. You know, and I may like that better. You know, some stuff might be a little bit green or a little bit weird when you first pop it, and then when it dries, it settles into something really nice. So you can't make a hard, fast rule about it. You know, you got to be able to. And again, that's part of the art of being a hashishan is knowing that and not just having this dogmatic approach to it. I freeze everything and I wash it. Oh, that's shit. Like,
yeah,
really?
man.
That's
okay.
cool.
So speaking to the art, you're coming off a first and second place win at Melting of the Heads in the melt category for your pink lemonade and your hammer. Is both of those entries were air dried. You know, what are your experiences producing melt with a freeze dryer versus air drying it?
I only use the freeze dryer if I can't get the hash to go through the sieve. I prefer it air dried. It represents visually better. I think it retains all of the terps better. It's just a different process. Not to knock freeze drying it because it makes a great product, and we freeze dry the strawberry yogurt. I can't get it to go through the sieve. But in my experience, I really find that the air dry it's more visually appealing. People fucking freak out when you show them some air dried sieve, man. And it does. I freak out still to this day. I'm like, God damn, look at this fucking crazy. You know, like it's nuts looking.
It's more stable too.
Yeah. It really is, right? Because it's gone through some treatments, right? It's broken down in these little things, and then it's got all these little environmental things going up and down a little bit. It's drying, it's curing, and it's doing its thing, and so it's got a nice little protection to it. And in fact, we don't press any rosin until the week before. The hash stays in the freezer, and then when I get orders, we press it to order, and then it goes out. Once you squeeze that stuff out, right, the clock is running. You got time, right? But as it's whole and in my freezer, it's good. It's good as gold.
For years.
years and years, you know, and it's just gonna get, you know, as long as you take care of it, right, you know, and I'm running through it, so it's not like it's sitting in there for a long time. But
Addison,
that's when I know I got it captured. That's when I sleep well at night, is when I know I got the hash in the jar and it's in the freezer. Boys, we banked it. You know what I mean?
do you see that as commonplace in the California market, Addison? Are makers practicing this practice, or are you seeing more makers?
Yeah.
They're holding their
It's like the main. That's kind of like the main. 1 second. I mean, that's one of the best things about the whole business, is that the material, the product, actually you can slow down, you know, the degradation process by just processing, you know, the fresh frozen into, you know, dried material to melt.
loose resin.
And then boom, put that in the freezer. That shit's good for like 10 years at least. Like,
Yeah.
and then you could pull it out anytime, make blends, do whatever you're doing. But I think that's a lot of guys do that. And a lot of guys take advantage of that. And that's like one of the major advantages of it. That's especially in terms of production, you know, for any product, edible, you know, now you're separating down to micron. It's like smarter.
And there's not a lot. It takes up some space. You know, we bring in, we get the racks and cookie sheets from Costco, pre-cut parchments, lay them out, put stuff in there, cover them up. You know what I mean? There's not a lot to it. You have to have some environmental controls. It doesn't take a lot. Should I let out a little secret about environmental controls? Should I drop some knowledge on it?
Do it.
Why wouldn't you?
So here's the thing, right? You're trying to get the moisture out of the air, but it's also a cold environment, right? So you can't just use regular dehumidifiers in there. You need to get a desiccant dehumidifier. They work better in the cold environments. I've never seen anybody flaunt them on their things. I've got them in my spot. They smell a little funny in the beginning, but there's a way to mitigate that. But that's going to help you dry down your hash better. It works in the cold environment better than a traditional dehumidifier.
And how do you mitigate that smell?
We pump the stuff out, and then, you know, honestly, just give it a little time. Once the thing runs for a couple weeks, the smell's gone. You know, when I first hooked it up, I was like, oh no, this ain't gonna fucking work. I can't have that smell on my hash. And we just let the fucker run, and we didn't put anything in and let it run for a couple weeks, and pretty soon the smell's gone.
Smoothed out. All right.
It really
let them break in.
Out, so we got the thing on the wall, and then that gets pumped right out into the hallway there. So it's not like circulating in the room or anything.
Because
you could put a filter on it.
The idea is that normal dehumidifiers aren't properly taking the moisture out of the air because it's so cold.
It's harder for them to do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
And don't get me wrong, you could have them in there. You know, I've got one in there, but I also have the desiccant, and the desiccant really helps me to get that down quicker and just manage it better. It just gets it out of the air.
Are you a proponent of fresh press? Like, are you putting out offerings in fresh press, or do you prefer to cure your material and then put it out as cold cure?
Oh, I think 90% of what we do is fresh press. You want to cold cure it yourself. And again, we've actually introduced a new line of the whipped products that are cold cured, and then we whip them and then we put that out. I personally like the fresh press better. And again, if I give you something that's already been cured and whipped, you can't go backwards from that, right? But if I give you something that's fresh, you can work that forward as much as you want. You know, I just don't see really the need for it. I think fresh press is just superior. You know, and then maybe some cultivars benefit from a cold cure and a whip. But again, I think that's best done on small scale when you're in control of that. And kids love to fucking play with their hash, right? Like, let them do that on their own. Like, you don't want me playing with your hash and then giving it to you, right? Like, that's kind of weird. I think, you know, I mixed it all up for you. And I think that, again, like, just like once you press it, you got a clock on it. So once you whip it, that fucking clock starts again now, right? Because you did all that stuff, that protective layer that was on there. It's gone now, right? So everything's starting to dissipate. That clock's running again, you know. So if I got a big fucking jar, I just whipped this whole fucking jar. I hope you sold that whole fucking jar that week, Because if you got that same jar in 2 weeks, it's gonna smell like cedar. It's gonna go to the base terps, and you're losing all the fucking magic in it, and it tastes like every fucking thing else. And then you might as well go smoke BHO because it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing
Donuts.
a tremendous increase in the popularity of solventless vape carts. Is that something that you're exploring at all?
Yeah, we got them out. I'm looking to see where it's going. We're putting them out.
So are you having, like, did you find that there was a lot of R&D to get to where you wanted the product to be? Or did you, what are your experiences? Because I know a lot of people struggle to get a solventless vape cart to perform, especially in the latter part of the vape, of the latter half of the cart.
I definitely prefer the half gram to the gram. We do make a couple gram carts for specific stores that have asked for them, but I think half gram's the way to go for that particular reason. A little bit of R&D, not a lot. I mean, I think most of the R&D went into which carts work the best, which hardware works the best. But as far as the process, I got friends.
Yeah.
I got friends at the top of the game, and they showed me exactly how to do it right. So there was very little learning curve. It was, this is the process, do this and you'll be fine. And we do that, and we're running it. You got to have the right tools, the right equipment.
Yeah.
And you got to do, like when you turn on your oven, don't just assume that the temperature that it says is what the temperature is inside. Just like in a grow room or whatever you're doing, you want to have multiple checks. So like on our deal, we set it at 138 degrees because that's what it takes to get the internal temperature to 120. It's not because we wanted it at 138 degrees, but that was just testing that particular unit. So knowing your equipment and your tools that you're using is going to help you dial in that process.
100%. That's great advice. So speaking of tools, you recently just grabbed a hashtag, the 65T model. What is your experience with, a large commercial vessel compared to your previous methodology of, just washing in stainless steel vessels? Like how has that been, and what have your observations been?
So there was a little bit of a learning curve there. And really understanding that the system has basically two kind of separate water systems on it that you can marry together, and how that flow works. Once I figured that out, it became infinitely easier. And hashtag has been really great in their customer service and support. So we've had to make some little modifications with the paddle and stuff, and then they've been right there to help. So big ups to hashtag on that deal. That's really cool.
Alex and those guys are cool, man.
Yeah, you know what I mean. They want to win. They want everybody that's partnering with them to win, and we're really stoked to be using the hashtag machine. So production wise,
yeah,
we went from 2 people to 1 person in that lab washing, and we can do more material. It's a little bit of a slower process, but quite frankly, it's slowed down because we're able to wash longer. We're getting bigger yields. It's not like, oh, this process is just a little slower. It's like it's extending the life of the material, and we're getting more pulls. So it's taking us a little bit longer. But we're doing like 12,000 grams, I think, a wash, and we're doing 2 of those a day on heavy days. So 24,000 grams. Again, we're not some big crazy operation. I got 3-4 people in my hash lab, and that's it. So we're running through a lot of material and being able to clear our greenhouses as they come down and keep room in the walk-in freezer. But it's an easy machine to clean. We're pretty stoked to have it. Blessed to have it. We got a big ass ice machine. That thing, it just eats. Honestly, it uses less ice than the machines. It uses less ice than hand washing, because that unit it retains the cold. I'm not having to pour ice in.
Are you a fan of washing in the cubes, or are you washing naked?
I've always been. I always liked washing in the bags, but and we've done some washes in the bags in the big hashtag, and it works. But we've also just, I kind of just said, let's dive in. Let's do a couple weeks worth of naked washes and see how we feel about it. And we're finding that in this process, it works just the same. The quality hasn't dropped off at all. So we've actually kind of switched over to doing the naked washes now, and I'm stoked on it.
Interesting. That's very cool. I
did not think I was going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm honestly, like I was like anti. I'd be like, but Frenchie says, I'm like, yeah, but Frenchie, you never saw Frenchie, right? Like that was kind of like the inside joke we had. But truth be told, it was just, he was making something different. You could fully pull 6-star and naked washes. You just got to be gentle with it, And the first time I went in there and used the machine, I wasn't very gentle with it, not as gentle as I needed to be. And so you can really dial that thing down, and it just does a great job. It really does nice and smooth. And we've kind of dialed in the parameters, because you can do that on the machine. You can how long it spins and how hard it turns, and you can really kind of focus that. And wash is a little different, so we're making a little bit of adjustments, but we've kind of found a sweet spot that we can repeat.
Is there a ceiling with these commercial machines in your mind, or this specific machine, even just to the experience that you have, to quality, that you would go for a hand wash if it was competition level? Or do you feel as though, this machine or these commercial machines can be dialed in to the point where, they're producing competition level hash?
I we'll find out. If I win this Legends, you'll know.
All right.
But honestly, like the stuff that we won Moth with, it wasn't hand washed. We didn't do anything special. That was literally like off the shelf shit that you can buy in the stores. I did nothing special. We did not treat that stuff in any kind of special way. In fact, it was literally like, what's in the freezer? What do we got to take? And that's what I'm bringing down to Legends. What's left of the 6-star in the freezer? Coffee's the only, we had enough of it, and I got GMO, but I don't know that people want GMO right now. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, but I could bring that down and probably slap people with it. I'm gonna bring some down to share with folks. I'll say that. I'm also gonna bring down some Hamma and some pink lemonade, 6 stars. But
pink lemonade.
Ooh, yeah. So I don't know, and I feel like I could bring that down and enter it too. But let's do something different. I already did that one. You know what I mean? Let's try a different trick. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then that's okay too.
How do you?
For me, it's more about fun and the experience. I don't need to be validated. I don't.
Oh yeah.
Nobody needs to validate me. So I'm experiencing it. Some people are like, I need this to make my bones, and I get that. But for me, it's a different thing. For me, I want those people to have their chance to make their bones against me. Like the champ's got to get in the ring. Come take your shot with me. That way, when you win, you can be like, man, I beat Kaya in that one. Like, fuck yeah, you did, dude. That was
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, let's have that exchange. I don't want to be like, no, these are all my trophies, and you never beat me.
I think it's important to have that, gatherings and competitions. And I think that what was once these, high times comps and things that serve that purpose no longer serve that purpose for the culture. And I think we're seeing like this, emergence of more events, but having this pinnacle event like Legends to kind of set the stage and be that top event, I think is really cool. And I just think, the more competition, the more friendly competition that we can breed, I think is better. And I think we do that through having more competition. So
and honestly, like, and I had entered in Chalice and some High Times Cups, and I don't think that those people really honored the stuff that we entered. I'm gonna be honest, and no disrespect to Dougie. I appreciate everything he's been doing, but I that's kind of when I stopped entering competitions. I had sent down an ounce of coffee, beautiful fucking coffee, and my friend that caught the thing down in LA was like, bro, they're collecting them down here. They don't have a fucking freezer. Like everything's just melting out here. Like, and I was pissed. How are you gonna have me send down all this fucking work? I go through this great length, and then you're just gonna fucking just let it spoil and then pass it around to your judges. Like that was really disrespectful. And I think that the Moth, the Legends, it's just a different understanding. It's not some fucking guys You know, like how many entries can we get? How many collection fees can we get? You know, and we'll throw them in here and whoop de whoop. Like these are people that really actually understand the nuances of you know, if you're going to take this in, you got to keep it cold. We're going to have the right environment. So we're going to, you know, like, listen, I want to fly down. Plane tickets are fucking cheap. I'm going to drive down because I don't want my hash to melt.
Yep.
I'm bringing that motherfucker cold. It's going to be perfect when it shows up. You know,
goes right into a freezer.
You know, but that's the extra step I'm going to take, you know. So I know that you guys would take that extra step and make sure that my entry is really cared for and such, you know. And I think at Eagle Clash, when I went and dropped the stuff off, you know, Brandon was like, boom, we got the freezer right here. You know, it was like handing the thing and right into the deal. And that's, you got to have people understand that, right? Like, fuck, man. You want to judge the model when she's all made up, not when her fucking makeup is melted off in the morning. Fuck, she look like a hound dog again. You know, come on.
What's cool about Legends is that the judges are your peers, right? The judges are all the makers, and I think that's really what's so special about it.
I mean, we learned to have the freezer there, and we learned to make sure that the judges are the makers from Ego Clash and Brandon, and how the makers respond to that stuff. So that's, you know, definitely, you know, hats off and appreciate that from those guys from that side, from the judging side of things for sure. So, but no, it's just the makers, and then there's an even number of makers. So then we add 5 other judges, which are Deppy and JP Toro, Lot Comedy. So there's, you know, some guys that are hash guys, that are glass guys, that are kind of good, that'll fill in the next 5. So.
Scott loves my hash, baby. Bring him down. Come on.
He's coming, man. He'll be there. So he'll be there both days, and he's they're doing the Mothership GZ1 collab drop.
Filthy.
So that's like a big hash, fun ass fucking drop anyway. So I'm stoked to see what they do.
Super dope. Well, we're gonna be dropping. I'm gonna bring down some fresh seeds. I got some new shit that has never been released, so we're gonna be doing seed drops at the event. I'm bringing down the Turk Trike, so y'all can come check out the Turk Trike.
That's what I was gonna ask you.
I'm gonna have hash on deck, you know, bubbles and melts. So, you know, come get. I ordered up some swag. We'll have some fresh swag just for the event. Like you know what I'm bringing it. Like if I'm coming, and
I know how you do.
My whole shit's coming with me. You know,
bringing the heat.
We're bringing the heat. I'm even gonna bring down. I felt really bad for not bringing Tyler to Moth. Tyler is my hash helper. He's a young kid. He has cystic fibrosis, and he came to me 2 years ago. He actually came to our sovereign farming thing, and then afterwards was like, "Hey, can you teach me to make hash? I just want to learn for myself." And he came and he worked in my hash lab. And it was difficult for him, but man, he stayed in there and he worked for like 2 months. And I was like, dude, can I pay you? You want a job? You want to stay here? And he was like, yeah. And he's been in there. I taught him how to wash. I taught him how to squish. You know, he's part of this process, and it's really, really cool to have this kid in. So I'm gonna bring him down with me too. No, you know, just thank you to him and to acknowledge to him, like, you know, like I've been doing this a long time, and this kid just picked it up, put his whole heart into it. You know, and he's really stoked to be part of the whole thing. And
yeah,
man, I helped make that hash, you know, and it's cool for him, you know.
Yep. No, that's what you want at Legends too. I mean, those are the people that you want to see get exposed to that much hash and that many makers and that sort of environment too. So
yeah, he'll be stoked. It's gonna be good. I'm bringing the Bearded Kraken down with me. He's gonna have some of his seeds. His new releases. He's got a whole bunch of shishkaberry crosses, shishkaberry times GMO, shishkaberry times pinkleberry, times pink lemonade, times hamma. Like we're crossing up all of our hashy shit. You know, we're probably not going to give you a straight shit. Like my dad would not give you his straight hat, straight claret. You know, you're not going to get that shit. Maybe somebody will. But for the rest of you can scoop these up, and the little seed boxes with Kraken stuff, they're going to be like five packs for $100.
Oh,
you know, so super affordable. I'll also bring down my nice wooden boxes, and we'll do a nice special deal for the Legends on that one too. We'll do a really nice special so everybody can take a nice box home.
That's awesome.
Sick.
Yeah.
So like currently you're working with the hamma line, the coffee line, and then are you doing you're doing strawberry yogurt as well, and working that line as well, or what?
We're kind of just doing all kinds of shit. the next stuff that we're really going to be working on is taking like F7 back to F1 or BX4 to F6, and doing some IBL breeding with coffee that I think is going to turn everything kind of on its head. And then we're also doing these fun one-off crossings with some of our unique hash elites, you know, and getting those worked out. We did a Hamma drop, the Hamma F2, and all those crosses. I'll actually have a little bit of that left. If you guys have not scooped the Kraken Kush, slap yourself and order some, because it's my favorite fucking hash. It's incredible. It throws down in the garden. I'll have some of those with me. I don't think we're really working that Hamma line any further right now, but maybe we'll pick that up in the spring. But right now we're like I said, we're doing some of those interbreedings with the coffee. I've done some partnerships with Gnome Automatics, and so he's doing an auto flower with the Hamma and with the coffee. So we'll have some of those things coming out. I'm trying to partner with, I'm not going to say who, but you know, some fem breeders, so we can get a massive amount of coffee fems out there to people. I'm thinking mostly of like Morocco and those folks, because I would love to see a wave of coffee hash hit Europe.
That'd be dope.
If anybody out there, you know, like, I think I'm going to try to do it with in-house genetics, because they've got a pretty solid fem program. But you know, if I can make 1 million fem coffee seeds and send half of those, or you know, most of them over to Morocco, and I think that would be really dope to see that wave hit Europe. You know, coffee, traditional coffee hash. I would, you know, to me, that's like
full circle.
Cool things. I've checked some things off the list, but that would be one, you know, and it seems every year I miss it. Like the last 3 years, I've had people call, and the one year I happened to have like 1,000 coffee fems. The first year I did it, and a guy from Oklahoma bought them all, and had a great successful season, sent me crazy pictures, and then we just never really did anything more. But I think that's something I'll be pushing on in this off season here.
I wanted to ask you about tissue culture, Kyle. You know, we're seeing a rise in a lot of people talking about it, discussing it at home, offering at home classes. Like, is that something that you have had much experience with?
So this is kind of cool. You guys familiar with Mike Hydro?
I don't think so.
He runs the program for Jungle Boys.
Oh,
he does
yeah.
all their TC.
Yeah.
He was actually up here in Washington working with my friends over here at House of Cultivar. And he came and picked up our pre-99 DJ Short Blueberry, and he picked up my coffee. And he went and TC'd him and brought him back to me free of charge.
Wow.
Just to do it on GP, because like the Blueberry was a really fun one. And we wanted to just check that out and see what it does, and run them against the originals and see, you know, does the one that we put out in the sun to rejuvenate do something? Does this one, you know, it's kind of cool to play with. And they've got those stored now in their bank over at House of Cultivar, so we could pull them out anytime we wanted to. I think it's really neat. I think it's cool technology. I think there's space in the breeding world where you can eliminate certain things and add, you know, sky's the limit, really, you know. And I'm more traditional, you know. I like regular breeding. I like me making the selections based off of my stuff, you know. But I think that there's also a space for science where they are, you know, determining you know, they can look at genetic markers and do predeterminations and use that to scale down, or do like a pre-sift before you go into cultivation, you know, production of cultivation or field tests or whatever. I think that stuff is super exciting. I participated in some of the first testing for when they were testing, like, you know, seedlings, finding out if it's boys or girls. And a lot of that experience wasn't great for me, right? Because the technology wasn't dialed in. You know? So I sent up samples and they said, oh, these half are damn, these are male. And they were all fucking wrong. You know, they got half of it right, you know, and I was like, fuck that, you know. And then they pushed that science down the road and they figured it out. And so I think that's very helpful, especially when you can do home test kits. That was the other thing. The first one I did, it was like I had to send them to Canada. By the time I got the fucking samples back, I already knew what they were. You know what I mean? But as this stuff progresses, it's going to become more prevalent and more accessible.
Yeah.
Same thing with when they're
talking
about making, you know, we got a tissue culture lab. We're not going to take clones anymore. We're just going to do all these clones from tissue culture. I still have never fucking seen that. I don't know anybody who's done 10,000 fucking seedlings from a tissue culture and ran a big crop. And nobody's fucking done it. You guys have been talking about it like it was the fucking next thing since sliced bread for 5 fucking years, and nobody's ever done it. I don't know if it's possible. Maybe that was a pipe dream that they had.
Yeah.
Good idea. If it worked out, cool. You know, and maybe it will get to that point where they can do it. Right now, and when they first started talking about it, I was like, I'm not fucking doing that. I'm not going to throw out what works for this new idea. I need to prove. And I think that they're getting to that point, and they're getting enough field tests and data where they're being able to adjust things and make it, you know, like a friendly kind of thing to do, where you don't have to have scientists that you're paying huge money in a fucking $20, $50, $60, $100,000 fucking thing to make, you know, like I don't need all that, man. Like I got a fucking almond or a T5 in the other room and I can take 1,000. I don't need, you know, like you got to make the shit line up, right? And there's been a lot of this consultant madness where I've got an idea and I'm going to revolutionize. And it's like, man, all that thinking is nice, but if you can't make the fucking rubber meet the road, it's all theoretic. You know, and there was a lot of theoretical talk going on for a long time, and it like fucking dominated the discussion. You know, it was like fucking, it was all this fucking, you know, investment money and IP and technology, and it's like none of this shit is in my world. None of this fucking makes any sense. None of you guys are, you know, like you have no fucking clue really. Like nobody's talking about bank, nobody's talking about quality production, nobody's talking about being able to put out consistent quality over time. Like none of these things are even in the fucking conversation. And you guys are over here sniffing your own farts, using this big language and thinking that you're all smart. And I get it. It's self-fulfilling to the ego, and you got this attention. You know, I remember the moon guy with his TC stuff, and he took people's money and then fucking bolted. And it's like, I've just had enough of that, I guess.
Yeah.
You know. So instead of like looking at things and going, oh yeah, that's a great idea, I'm looking at it and going, sounds like that guy's trying to make some fucking money.
Yeah.
Come to me when you've got it dialed and you got it figured out, and it makes sense to me as a farmer, and it's not a risk to me, it's a benefit to me.
Yeah.
Because at this point, it's all fucking hyperbole. You know, it's fucking talk at this point. You know, like show me where the rubber meets the road. Show me how this actually translates, how this actually fucking works in the real world, and then we can go somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, that's the basis of truth.
He was smiling over there, like, you know the bullshit I'm talking about. Like, fuck, man.
Yeah.
My boy Ghost from Kush Family Farms, he just bought a farm across the street. These fucking guys bought every fucking toy known to man. Half the shit, you got to throw it out. It's fucking, it's rubbish. But they had every fucking sales guy show up, and they were going to do this and do that, and they got nowhere. You know, like, you got to have your feet on the ground. You got to have, you know what I mean? You don't fight a fucking war on a computer in a simulation. Like, real world is different, you know? And if you don't have that experience, man, you can really get yourself hung up, you know, thinking that you've got something there when you really haven't field tested it. I think there's a place for all that tech stuff. I just don't think that it's come of age yet.
Yeah.
And God bless the people that are pushing money into it and experimenting and taking those chances. Big ups, because I think it has a chance to do some really cool stuff for the future of cannabis. But right now, I don't know that it's made it there.
I want to circle back a little bit to hash and talk about yields. You know, as one of the more accomplished breeders in the space, where do you feel the plant maxes out for yield in solventless? Like, do you feel there's a threshold that at that point the plant, you know, that it's not going anywhere past this marker here?
We haven't even been breeding for this type of thing long enough, I think, to put a cap on it yet. I think we're at the infancy. And no disrespect to the people who have been breeding hash in foreign countries for a long fucking time, right? They've been advancing things on a different level. Some of those cultivars we use as the building blocks over here. But this is a different way of making hash that we're doing now. And to develop genetics and growing methodologies that are going to highlight that and capture the pinnacle, I think we have plenty of room to grow. I think off the top too, like environmentally stuff with the lights that we're using, I've heard, and we're experimenting with LEDs and getting big yields in different head sizes. So I think there's a lot of potential room for growth and learning and pushing that envelope forward.
Interesting.
What do you think the greatest yielder is right now? I can tell you.
GMO, I mean, is the resounding sort of bar that is set. And like, most people are saying, the plant can't go much beyond X or Y, but, it gives me great pleasure to hear that, your opinion is otherwise. Like, I think that we are definitely in the infancy of actually targeted breeding for solventless. But there's also like how many trichomes can the plant physically hold on itself and then release in the wash before it becomes like scientifically no longer a viable.
Sure. And there's a lot of factors to that, right?
For sure.
The style of trichome, but also the morphology of the plant, right? Does this plant grow like a really dense thing that you can't get to? Is it growing something that's a little more open? And then once you get that down, what kind of things are you doing in the garden to accentuate that? Are you giving it fucking gravity so it's and fucking it up, or are you doing some tricks with your light to actually get it expand a little more, get a little more surface area? Again, there's a couple different variables there that I think can come into play. Think about this too. For a long time, people were just breeding for smoking, and those varieties, my blueberry is the best smoke on the planet. It's only going to give you 3 or 4% hash, closer to 3. Like, it just does not want to hash. We were breeding for smoking varieties for a long time. And now we're breeding for something else, right? And in that short period of time, I figured out on our farm, we've got some of these Tangy Power crosses coming off. Man, they're 7 to 9%. That's fucking big. A lot of the cultivars we run are 5, 6. But when you get like 7, 8, 9, that's a jump. So we feel like, oh shit, what did we just unlock with those? The GMO, I talk to people, most people that are running GMO, they tell me 8%. I've got off our indoor GMO, 11.1%. The outdoor we just pulled from our primitive greenhouse, light up greenhouse, just fucking ran 9%. So I don't know where these other guys' numbers are all the way, but that's where we're at. And those are huge fucking numbers. Do the math backwards on that GMO. That's over 4,000 a pound.
Can you talk about your post-harvest SOPs? Because I think that that's really what sets you apart. You
gotta pay for that on the Patreon. I'm kidding.
How it is now.
It's coming. Please help me figure out a Patreon thing. People are doing this. I want to do it. I want to share this stuff. I got cool stuff to share. So again, you have to be able to adjust on the fly. But our ideal deal, like when we're harvesting indoor and it's all like what it is, we're big leafing prior to harvest, right? All the big leaves coming off as best we can. And then when we harvest it, the guy's bucking the big plant, hanging it and breaking off branches and then handing them down the line. And then the first people are essentially bucking off anything that doesn't have sugar on it. That's gone. And they're not cutting any leaf material. You're not allowed to cut leaf until you have to cut the stem. So they're popping the stems off. Then it goes further down the little assembly line. And the next people are actually bucking them off the stem at the base of the bud. And if there's a big bud, they can actually walk it right up the bud to make smaller pieces. And they're dropping that right onto cookie sheets that are lined with a parchment paper. Once that cookie sheet is full, and we're not piling it, it's one layer across. Then they put it on the rack. Once we get 20 cookie sheets on a rack, the rack goes into the freezer. And it's like flash freezing it essentially. And we like to say 24 hours is like the minimum if you are in that situation, but 24 hours or 48 hours is like optimal or longer. After 48 hours, we pull them off. We've got this kind of like funnel deal that we've built. And then they go into turkey bags, 1,000 grams at a time. And then we've got just racks and racks of stacked 1,000-gram turkey bags that are then put into the wash rotation. And we try to get them washed within a week or two. And that process, it's a little painstaking. You know, there's been times where we've actually went through and stripped. Stripping it is okay too. If you're in a hurry, you got more material than you do manpower, it's okay, but it's going to bring your yields down a little bit. You're going to have a little more chlorophyll in your water. I tell my guys, it's not one thing that you're going to do that's going to make your hash great. It's literally the 100 things that you do in the process. And if you hit every single one, you're going to have the bombest shit on the deal. Every single time that you take a shortcut or can't make that, just start subtracting quality. You know, just like growing a crop, right? Fucking forgot a watering, take some money out. You know, take some yield out. You forgot to do that. Take some money out, right? So everything that you don't do, subtract. Everything that you do, all that little extra effort, that's going to give you your optimal yield and your optimal quality. And in our system, it works. It's worth it to pay the guys a little bit extra. Again, you heard me say some of the yields.
Have you
talk to people? I'm beating them by percentage points, and I accredit that to the process.
Have you compared that process when you remove the rack dry? So you're just going direct, you're doing everything but the rack dry, and you're going directly into the turkey bag and then freezing and seeing what the yield difference is? Because like, and truly finding out like where the big difference is.
No. Once we got the infrastructure to cut it on the cookie sheets, I don't want to go back the other way.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
I mean, you got to do it one way or the other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Might as well do it the right way or the superior way, the way that's going to get you a little bit of a better product. I mean, listen, an example, and I'm going back Friday to grab the rest, but I drove over Eastern Washington. My buddy's got a huge farm over there. We gave him a shit ton of pink lemonade. Man, you should have seen this crop. It was fucking unreal. And his wife grew the whole thing herself. And we chopped the plants. We ran them through a Christmas tree baler, baled them up, stacked them, standing up in the cart, brought them home, undid them. It's not optimal. It's not the best way to do it. But in that scenario, that's what we had to do. And it's going to turn out fine, you know. But if you can do it the optimal way, do it that way. So that's how we do it, you know. And you're going to get some damage on your trichomes, right? If you're just chopping it into a fucking bag on top of each other, right? Like, why do you think I'm doing it on a cookie sheet? Because it's flat and you're not getting buds piled on top of each other. There's no weight, there's no pressure. Again, it's just one small thing. You know what I mean? But all those small things add up, right? If you're harvesting in the dark versus in the warm end of the day, and then you're not freezing it like that, like I'm doing it, and you're putting it in a bag, now you just got 2 strikes on you, right? Keep adding those things up, and at the end of the race, I'm going to beat you by that many steps. That's just how it is. You know, you might have saved a little bit of money, you know, but I can figure it out. And honestly, it probably cost me money the first 5-6 times that I had the trimmers do that because they were learning. Now they're fast as fuck, and they've caught up. So now it doesn't really cost me anything, and I command top dollar. I'm at the top of the market in Washington State. I get more money from my hash than anybody else, and it's not because of a fucking sticker. It's because of what's in the fucking jar. So
100%, man. You've earned that. I mean, you've built that brand from, as we talked about earlier, the very early days. Somebody in the chat had a great question. Have you played around at all with processing fresh as opposed to frozen?
Yes.
And what is your experience?
No, not good. Your yields go way down, and it's just a little too greasy. Can fuck up your bags. You want to freeze it. In fact, my buddy down the road, Sage, hit me back, and he's like, "Bro, can I just chop these in the thing and do the thing?" I'm like, "You can. You totally can do that, and you'll get some hash. It'll be fine. It'll be great. But again, it's just not necessarily optimal. You want it fucking frozen, you know, because we're trying to get that thing brittle and get those motherfuckers to fall off.
So I want to talk about switch gears a little bit and talk about legalization in Washington State specifically. I know you were pretty. You chose to be an activist and step into the public light during that time. Like, what did you think that Washington did right versus what they did wrong during that time? of like over that cycle of legalization that you've been in?
I don't think they did much right at all. They came out and they lied to the people. They told people that the medical market was heavily flawed and contaminated with bad weed, and that they were going to test all the weed coming onto the recreational market. They just implemented mandatory pesticide testing. They've already sold $2 billion worth of cannabis and cannabis products, and now they're going to give us testing. They let these huge fucking operations come in that had no business being in it, and they were able to survive because they didn't lose crops because they fucking poisoned them. And now that they've ran everybody else out of the fucking market, and it's mostly the big fat dogs left, now they're going to test them. Complete horseshit. They've overtaxed it immense. I mean, 45% of every cannabis dollar goes to the state. It's fucking mad. That's absolute madness. And you know what? The people here in Washington State begged for it. Tax us as much as you want, as long as you validate us and you make us legit. And we were screaming, no, don't fucking do that. You regret it later. Because once they have their hands in your pocket, they're not fucking taking it out. I understand that. There's never been a politician in the history of fucking politics that said, man, we collected too much tax money. We're going to lower your taxes next year.
Or an industry that's been deregulated.
No fucking money that will satisfy their spending hunger. I want to show you something. See this? Files full of medical authorizations from people that I cared for. There's over 100 people in there. I became an activist for them because I knew old people that they weren't into weed. It wasn't a weed thing. They were sick and they needed fucking medicine. And I was able to provide that and help them. And these fuckers took it away from them. And we've really lost sight of that in all of this. And don't get me wrong, all of this is great. We need legends. We need competitions. We need commerce. We need all of that. But not at the cost of losing our soul, not at the cost of losing the spirit of what this plant is and the gift that it is. Y'all see me wearing the colors today, right? I took my babies to church this morning, right? Ganja is a sacrament. This is a holy gift, you know, and it's not something for us to just pimp and monetize, you know, and it doesn't make you fucking cool, right? Like if you're cool, you're cool, right? Like do something with it that honors it and that honors yourself and your own existence, right? Because if we reduce this sacrament and we reduce ourselves to being agents of the state to create tax channels and blah blah fucking blah, then that's all we are, man. And fuck that. You know, we get one fucking life. Let's do something with it that's meaningful for each other and powerful. And I don't mean to get all, but I'm gonna get that way because
it's fine, man.
What the fuck else is there, you know?
Well, you see,
if you're not into that, put on that big fucking, slap that big C on your back and run out there and you know, do some dumb shit, you know, like you know, like I need more meaning in my life. I don't know about you guys. For me, it's soul crushing to have empty conversations. It's soul crushing to have people just fucking lost, you know, like I want to wake people up to glory that this experience is, and to fill it with awesomeness. You know what I mean? Like I'm not just trying to run through the next crop to get to the next hash to make the next dollar. Like I'm soaking it all up, man. I'm taking my time with it because I love it. I'm in no rush, you know? So, I don't know. I just want to put that vibe out there. Reminder, you know, we carry our hearts with us everywhere we go, and we got to be, you know, like you got to lead with that, you know?
Every market that we've seen come online, whether it be California or Canada or Oklahoma, the prerogative or stated prerogative has always been safety and, you know, for the patient and for access. And that really hasn't been what has happened. And it always ends up being a an eventual race for large, well-capitalized companies to starve and push out small mom and pops at basically putting out products at losses or near losses to make that happen. And my question to you, Kaya, is, what are your thoughts on the next 3 years? Like, are you optimistic, or do you feel that it's got to get a little bit worse before it gets better?
I'm gonna tell you like this. It's up to you. And I'm talking to anybody who's watching this right now. It's up to you. We can continue down a road that is the same path that they put on our food, where they kill the small farmer. This country used to be 85-95% small farmers, right? Our food quality was great. Our health was great. They took it down this path of commoditization and corporatization and centralization, and look where it's led us. You have the same choice now with cannabis. You can either support those people with your dollars, and in 5 years, that's all you'll have is them serving you. Or you can support people like Roots. You can support people like that are doing this right, that come from the same cloth as you, that have the same intention as you. You can support us with your dollars. And I promise you, I will reciprocate. And I will help to create a system that will feed us and take care of us in a different way. And I think that the answer to your question, Jameson, is it's our choice. And we absolutely have the power to determine our own destiny and which way we take this. But we have to put our fucking money where our mouth is. And we have to really take this shit seriously and start doing that. I'm not a huge Burner fan, but if he's the guy that everybody got to coalesce around, then let's do that. If it's not him, I'll step up now. Let's go. Get behind me and we'll, or get next to me and we'll walk this thing forward the way that it needs to be done. But if you just leave it to chance, or if you think that your dollars don't matter when you're spending them, you're going to have a rude awakening. You're going to wake up in a fucking, you think that there's a sea of mids now. And look at our food, man. Like, inner cities don't have access, right? We're getting fucking GMO shoved down our fucking throats. I don't like that. I don't like that. I want to leave that for my kids. I want to leave them something else, and I'll fucking fight you for it. So
you got to stand up that way too. And otherwise, nowadays it's like, if you don't feel that way, then you're not going to be able to stand your ground and progress, and shit's just kind of gotten so much more fucking crazy. So just keep your own sanity.
I don't let it get on my head. It's really easy to let it get on your head. You can, oh man, glass house, the sky's falling, and nah, man, we're still here. Look at us.
Gosh.
Look at us. You know what the most rare thing in the universe is? Human attention. And in our movement, the attention's still on us. They're trying to pull it away from the center, but the attention's still on real shit, right? Like, people that care and people that are inside of this culture that we have, they still care. They still want to do things right. And we're still doing, things to take care of our culture and to move it forward. That's why you guys put your time and effort into this event, right? That's why you do Legends.
100%.
That's why Addison has been doing all the work that he's been doing over the last couple of years, trying to build this thing, and he's got this fucking vision, and I want to support that. I can't do everything myself. I need to look and see that guy's here with me. This guy's running with me. I can see the other motherfuckers running with their bow and arrows behind us. I can see the other guys angling to corral us, right? But I'm looking at the motherfuckers to the right and left of me that got their hatchets out, and we're going to cut through whatever the fuck comes at us. And eventually they're going to have to circle back and get behind us and just follow where we're going. Otherwise they're going to corral us up and we're stuck in their little fucking trap.
It's about culture and putting on, moving the culture forward, like doing, what Addison's doing with Legends, with Melting of the Heads and all these other competitions, like building community that, I think is really massively underestimated by a lot of these accountants and research firms that are, judging where the market's going and what's being accessed. Like, I think that a lot of new consumers who are coming into the markets are skewing this data, but there's this large underground movement that's not really being accounted for in every market that cannabis is present, which is everywhere. So I think it's really going to be interesting over the next 3 years. And I think it is kind of dependent on growing the awareness of the community and then people learning through being exposed to the community. And it's really, you know, when you become part of something where you're learning about things by osmosis, just by wanting to be a part of that thing, is when you can learn really quickly. And so I think having these events and building this stuff is important.
Yeah, I mean, what platforms do we have?
Few.
I mean, Hash Church is one of the biggest.
Yeah.
Right. And we're like Instagram, but it's all spread out and it's not like a centralized thing, right? Like, yo, how many fucking national news specials have you seen on cannabis, right? And they all are like pharmaceutical, this, that, and the other thing, right? Nobody's you've never seen a national one on culture. You're not seeing fucking Swamp Boys or Jungle Boys or Roots on fucking ABC. They're not going to shine a light on us. They know that if we get the spotlight, shit's going to change. You know, and I think eventually we're going to reach enough people. I mean, that to me, that's really what's holding us back. If people knew my story, if people knew about Roots, sky's the limit, right? Like there's other people that don't want everything to be known about them, right? They got skeletons, they got dark shit, they're fucked up, they're beat dogs, they, you know, there's all kinds of weirdos in the fucking out here, right? Like, but if you get the right story out there, if you get the right narrative, you get the right things going, like there's no limit to what we can do. We can reshape so much, you know, and I'd be happy just reshaping our own destiny and making sure that we can do this thing of ours our way. But we can change so much more once we get that foothold. We can maybe reverse some of the effects of the food system, right? Taxation, you know, ease some burdens, you know, do some good works with our power. But we really have not come to even, I think, conceive how we grasp the power or how we wield it. But in reality, we have this great power coming to us, this great gift given to us. You know, think about those rum runners at the era of Prohibition, and they came in, and some of those guys with great stories that got to carry on, and other ones got wiped out, right? But they kind of lost maybe some of that, right? They were in that same kind of thing. But we've got this other kind of knowledge and understanding where, man, we can do this a little different. And I don't know. I just think that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in this changing thing as national legalization rolls out. And, you know, we're looking at signing multi-state contracts now with people that are producing things. And, you know, I don't know how that shape is going to take form, but I know that we are definitely empowered, and we'd be foolish to just kind of go, oh yes, pick me up and help me along. And, you know, no, we need to really fucking like dig in and take the bull by the horns, so to speak. You know, and I will give Berner credit for doing that. I mean, he's taken the bull by the horns.
Yeah.
And we need more of that. So.
Yeah.
What do you think, Addison? Like, do you think that there's a way that you can dollar spend out of this, or do you feel that the coffers of like the, you know, just the capital of these large companies is just going to continue like squeezing the craft players out?
Look, I mean, I think if the craft players are producing a product that the market wants and they're marketing it correctly, then they're fine. And that's what it's always taken for any business. And you know, you have to understand that the reality is that the market itself is saturated with people who think they can do it the right way, or people who think that they've got what it takes. And that's the consolidation of that, and the consolidation of that, and the consolidation of that. It takes a lot of people that are good people out because they don't understand, you know, like Kai was saying, is like there's 5 different points that you have to hit to make really good hash. There's 20 things that you have to hit in business when it comes to making good hash, because you have to market, you have to produce, you have to scale, you have to distribute, you have to sell. You know, You have to be able to, someone has to understand business and forecast all these things and coordinate all the people moving. Like, there's a lot of things that have to be hit correctly in order to make it go. So the issue is that problem doesn't give a fuck if you're old school, 20 fucking 50 years in it, and it doesn't care if you're new money, that's a Chad, that does whatever. You have to hit those 20. You have to know how to do those fucking things. And you have to keep doing it every fucking day over and over and over and over again. And just because that's the measure, it takes someone who has even more to then stick up above that and be like, oh, what's up? Well, I'm this now. Here's the brand new, you know, and that's what's beautiful about the market.
Yeah.
But it's a soul crushing fucking thing to watch. You know, it's like watching the ocean, these massive waves crushing and fucking, that's what it's like. And it's the reality is like, hey, like he's saying, like you have to persevere, and you have to have this, like, you know, fucking warrior spirit to survive this type of shit. Or you can optimize yourself as a human being so that now you have a much better system yourself to be able to figure this shit out and do things, and then go from there. And then, you know, use loving kindness as a guide for every decision, so that you're always considering everything possible, and do all these things that then make it where, like, you know, oh, well, I don't feel jealous anymore, or I don't feel this way anymore. I don't feel this way because I have this mission. And that's like what life is it's like learning how to just become a better person. And I think, like, that's the same thing in business. Learn how to do business correctly and fucking hammer it, and don't, you know, you might, hey man, you got to admit to yourself as a business owner that you might have too many fucking people working for you. So you got to cut the fat, and there's decisions that have to be made that are hard decisions that mean the survival of your business, you know, and you learn that through the years. And like, that's one reason why, like, in business, I stay very lean, you know, so that it's like, nope, we're chopping wood and fucking carrying water together. This is business, you know, and then you get to the less people there that's doing that work. Jameson, you know that, like, the less people that are doing that work, the more food there is to split up, you know, when you're carrying in the woolly mammoth, you know,
especially in the early stages, you know, like, well, if you were trying to bring people in the early stages of your business before you've built something that can be recognized by a passerby, you're going to have to give away a lot, you know, and to get anything from anybody. And then 9 times out of 10, you're going to look back on it and wish you didn't, because you're going to realize, oh, I could have done that, or there was a lot easier pathway to do that. Or if I would have waited 6 weeks and just put my nose down, then I would have given half as much away. So I think that, you know, understanding that, and then there's a learning curve and a hard balance between, you know, people who are stewards of the plant and really connected to the plant, and then people who have an understanding of business knowledge at a high level, and really, if understanding your strengths and weaknesses and then finding the people that complement those is probably the biggest key to sorting it out, is knowing what you're good at, do that. Know what you're bad at, find somebody to do that. Don't do that. That's, you know, that's the experience that I've gotten, is things that don't click easily for me, I'm not rushing to try and learn to do.
Yeah. Hey, and you know what? Shout out yourself, Addison, because you are actually doing, like, I think about this a lot, like, amateurs talk strategy and professionals talk tactics, how or logistics, right? Like, how we're going to get this done. So it's all good and fine to say, you know, this should be the spirit and how we do things, but how does that rubber meet that road, right? And Addison, with your pipeline program, you're helping to build that infrastructure out. You figured out.
Deppy too.
You're figured out this is something that is missing, and we can figure this out, right? Like, I called you the other day because I had a friend, great farmer, great product, and he's like, hey, can you get a hold of any makers down here? And I thought, I could call 5, but I'm going to call my friend who's got this pipeline thing, and you can just plug you into the program, you know? And I'm not sure, we'll follow up offline on that, but tactical, you know, right? That's logistics. How do we make this thing logistically work? We're talking about working together. We're talking about, you know, using this great network, right? That is the other people don't have. right? So how do we make that network work for us? And that's how you do it. You get somebody like Addison that has figured out, hey, here's how we can make these things fit. Here's where the market's lacking, and here's where these guys need help. And if you marry those two together, then everybody wins. And that's the kind of shit you need. So
I mean, the biggest component is the hash selection breeder, really, in the whole pipeline, because the whole market responds to brand new genetics, and it responds to something it hasn't seen before more than anything else. And it can go heavy in that direction once it sees it. So, you know, it's the breeders and the guys now that are using these progenitors and these strains that heavy produce, that come from different places. That's really what when you look at the entire pipeline and you look at what that is and how it solves the problem, it's a relationship between us and the breeder saying, hey, you have brand new genetics, you want to put stuff out and get it more popularized, you want to get it into the washrooms more quickly, you can bring it into pipeline and do it that way. It'll definitely lead to selling more seeds for sure. And it'll also it'll push the stuff to the forefront. So, hey, if it's going to wash and people are going to like it, it's going to be there in production. So that's kind of the how the whole thing works. But without the breeder understanding that and seeing that, and there's quite a bit of them that have kind of been like, oh, okay, I fucking understand this. Like, here, because the selection still has to be done, the propagation still has to be done, all that stuff. So it's still, there's a lot of other work that has to go in, obviously, after that point. But the ones that like Taylor and the breeders that have gotten behind it, it makes such a big difference. But for them, the one breeder that got behind it the hardest is doing the best. He's killing it, and it's like, it shows that it's like, hey, he's willing to be like, all right, get my shit out there in a million different ways. And it's a lot of his hard work as well, but it's definitely like it lives and eats and breeds because of the breeders are willing to do it. And then all the rest of it are relationships that we put together to get that stuff out there. But the outcome of it gives us as hash consumers a much better selection of hash to consume. So it's, it all kind of runs full circle. But yeah, and then we make our living in the hash business, and in that part of the industry, and we don't, we're not producing hash. We're actually able to work with more people that way, and we can do more. And then, right now, Mothership and Scott Deppy have, partnered up with Pipeline, and now he's come on board as a partner and an investor in the company. So he's, we're going to do our marketing with Mothership and start doing a lot of that stuff. And we're launching that whole thing at Legends of Hash. So yeah, things are moving quickly in that direction. With that, we just formed the whole LLC and the company and got everything off the ground officially. So
badass. I want some stock.
Optimizing solidness while bringing heady glass closer, into the public eye. Like, it's not like it hasn't been close, but I think the, Mothership coming and playing a big role in Pyramid Pipeline and is just a beautiful, beautiful marriage that has like very big cultural benefits beyond, a sound business model. So I'm very excited that that's public information now.
Yeah, like it gives Mothership an arm into the California market without having to be, per se, like a licensed cannabis entity or a hash brand or some other stuff. They're then able to have an investment in the marketing, sale and promotion of fresh frozen to manufacturers that's curated through the whole entire system itself. And it's, Scott saw that and was like, this is a great idea. Like, this actually does make hash better, and it feeds the market, and it's smart. It's a smart way of doing business because, we don't have to be licensed. We are sales, marketing, and promotion. We kind of fit into this place with an understanding of the entire system and how it works, and then having the network to put it together is what I think that's more of like a smart industry move. It's we come from the core of the industry. We have these relationships. It benefits, when you look at it laid out, it benefits every single component involved, and everybody gets to eat and do well off of how the entire system works. So no, it's, and then having Mothership come out and say, hey, having Scott come and say, hey, this is a great looking system. I love how it works. I want to be a part of it, and he and I being friends, I'm like, all right, well, here's how it works. And then he came back and said, all right, well, let's figure something out. So we have, which is good. So we'll be launching it publicly at Legends. But we've already kind of locked everything in, which is great. So
Badass. I love it.
Yeah, we'll do all the marketing, which is cool. Like all the, I think what we're going to do is we still got to confirm some stuff, but we've already gotten like pretty good confirmation. And I think when they do the Mothership marketing, they'll like keep one of the pieces won't be featured in the marketing. And then that piece will be what's going to be then given away in pipeline. So like every single, I think like every quarter we'll give away. Like, isn't our podcast sponsored by Mothership?
I feel like our podcast might have been from.
I think it is. I think I've discussed it with him, and he's like, "Yeah, let's do something. We got to officially do that." Because here's the thing. I'll say this officially. Jameson, you and I have talked about this. Like, I don't think having a paywall like Patreon is really the best way to service people with information, whether it's an interview or anything else. I think the best way to generate revenue is to get sponsors that are willing to put their brand on your platform, which is wherever you're doing your show, your podcast, and you're attracting people to it. I think that's a much better way of doing it because, you're not hiding behind this paywall. And that just, I feel like when you do that, it's harder to market your product. It's much tougher to do that. And I think that you're excluding a bunch of people from it. And it's $4, but at the same time, it's like, who the fuck wants to be like, come on, that's a coffee. I'm good. So it's easy to miss those people too. But I just, and I'm not knocking anyone that does do it. I just think that it's the way that you get around that is by just getting some sponsors. So shout out to Mothership.
Between2Heads will never have a Patreon.
No, we'll never have a Patreon, man. I just don't think that it's. I think that it's like you're hiding behind that paywall, and it sort of excludes people. So we can get sponsors. We can get guys that are willing to give us love. So yeah, Motherships. The shit that we're doing for Legends with Mothership in pipeline is pretty fucking cool, actually. There's like some free T-shirts and some other stuff, like giveaways with some collabs. So.
Kaya, did you leave your ship at the ship when you were there for Scott to engrave?
I did.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
You guys want to see
Which one did you get?
Oh, yeah.
Hold on. Give me just a sec. I'll run downstairs and grab it.
Ooh.
It's like
which one is it?
It's an old piece. I can't even remember. It's an older piece, but it's got the like Pacific Northwest roots or Pacific Northwest theme to it, but he showed Scott, and I was like, Scott, would you put something in there for Kaya? And he was like, yeah, I'll do that.
Oh shit. I can't wait. I cannot wait to see.
Yeah, Scott's the greatest.
Oh, Scott rocks. Yeah, I'm stoked to have
the GZ1 drop at Legends is gonna be
oh my god.
So
I'm
great.
fucking fired up. I was trying to convince him to do because what is it? Fucking the guys at Alchemy Jars. So they're one of the sponsors, and Alchemy Jars has that glass insert. So I was trying to convince Scott. I'm like, look, you and Rob, you should do a bunch of inserts with the GZ1 inserts, and then you'll sell all the inserts. And I was like, I'll pay you for the first one. I'm like, let's go. Like, I'd love to have one of those for sure.
That would be so cool to have a GZ1 Mothership insert in the Alchemy jar.
GZ1 Mothership insert in the fucking Alchemy jar.
That's $500 all day long.
Yeah, that's like your dick in the mashed potatoes for sure. That's like
that's the best way to describe it.
Here's 2 ounces of hash inside of
Please give it
a heady fucking GZ1 Mothership jar, inside of this fucking thing. Speaking of fucking heady ass.
Is that Baron?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Is that the Gary?
Yeah, this is I think this is Gary.
It's Gary from Gary.
Gary from Uncle Gary.
shout out Gary.
Shout out to Uncle Gary.
For sure. I can't wait to see him in London.
Oh, so then here's fucking Larry. There's Larry and Gary. And this is Larry.
Who the heck is Larry? The ooh.
And the Larry is
Larry looks like it's strong.
I think it's the Gelato 33 is the Larry. And they call it the Larry because of Larry Bird.
Larry Bird, yeah, the 33 for sure.
Yep. And it is fucking fire. It is fire. So this is kind of like a commercial right now. So we could just tell people, go to mothership.com. Is it mothershipglass.com? Isn't that what it is?
It is.
I'm pretty sure.
Mothershipglass.com. We're just checking right now. And then sign up for the mailing list. You get to see a beautiful, beautiful email every couple of days with
you see where the drops are.
Photography. I don't enjoy getting it every single time. I'm like, oh, let's look.
You see when the drops are, and if you do it, you'll be the first to find out about the new NFT program. Which, if you get in on the NFT program, then you'll get invited to the 420 party. You'll get invited to the 710 barbecue. You can get invited to the new tie-dye parties. You get invited to all this different shit that Mothership's doing. And you'd come from anywhere in the country to do it. So that's going to be coming out, which is kind of fucking cool. So, yeah. Anyway, Mothership.
Sorry, I had to sneak a dab in.
You're loud, bro.
Ooh, sneaky. Oh, nice.
Got that banded up. Roots.
Let's see.
So, my buddy was working with Mothership years ago, and he calls me one day, and it was actually the chef, the guy who was like my first link up in Bellingham. Mm-hmm. And like, man, we're up here at Mothership, and they got this series of rigs, man. You got to have one, right? And it's like a Native American inspired design stuff. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I just had my first kid, and I'm like, bro, I can't drop $5,000 on a fucking rig. So like 2 years later, I get a phone call, and it's this kid from Seattle, and he's like, hey man, the chef said you might be interested. I'm selling this piece. I'm like, man, I don't think I can buy it. And he's like, well, I'll trade you. And at the time, I'm sitting on like 2 pounds of hash. Fuck yeah, I'll give you an ounce. So I gave him an ounce of hash. You could see all the design work on it.
Yeah, it's
fresh. Salmon jumping up the thing.
Yep.
And then on the front, it says Mothership. And then what I had him do was I had him etch on the back PacificNwRoots.
That's it.
Yeah, I was pretty stoked.
That is
old OFZ lid.
That.
Yeah.
And then you'd pop it on like that. Yeah, you'd actually set this sideways, like yay. Mm-hmm. And then you'd have it hot, and you'd take your dab in, and then you'd pop this off, whoop, right on there. And rip
old school minis, those are nice.
Yeah, and it's got the cool. I have like 5 different ones of these, all the different. This is the rose gold.
The dials, yeah.
And crazy enough, I don't know if you guys know Josh Scolari Glass.
Yeah.
Fucking mental. Turns out the guy's my neighbor. Literally live
a
mile up the street. So I'm always over there trading hash. And one day I'm like, bro, make me, because this one is like
he does all the plaid, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Burberry and shit. Yeah. And so I'm like, bro, can you make me a hash timer for my deal? And I'm like, can you put hash in it? And he's like, I don't know if like hash will work. It'll melt. And I'm like, can you use some Nebraska? And he's like, no, let me just sand. So it took him a week. He said he made 2 and broke the first one. He said, never do it again. It's got this really dope like timing thing on it.
Wow.
Isn't that beautiful?
That's very nice.
So maybe I'll bring this down to Legends out on the Terp Trike.
Oh yeah.
I like it.
But I was really stoked because Brandon was like, man, you should you should leave that piece here and have him engrave it. And I'm like, really? You guys? It's like, yeah. So I dropped off. I gave him a bunch of swag and some hash, and they knocked it out. And then he actually delivered the hash tech down to us, Brandon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So when he drove down, he brought me the rig, and yeah, it was
Nice.
very cool.
That's dope.
Yeah, hashtags got some great stuff, man. That's a good team of people.
Oh man, I'm very excited, Kai. I'm excited to see you at Legends. I appreciate you coming on the show, man. Like, how can what are you looking forward to? Like, other than Legends, you know, what are you working on for Pacific Northwest Roots right now?
Man, I'm actually super stoked. We're about to turn a production room of the Kraken Kush. So last year we did 1.1 million in hash sales in the rec market.
Fuck yeah.
Well, the first year, that was our third year. So the first year it was like 150K. We had 200 amps of service. It was like having a house. And then we doubled it. And then last year we hit 1.1. We're gonna be over 1 million this year. So that's really, really fucking cool for, you know, a dude like me. And so I'm super excited for this Kraken Kush to come back. And our outdoor just absolutely crushed it this year, pushing all that through. I think we're planning a little trip to New York. Are we not, Jameson, for New Year's? Maybe we'll start off 2023 in the Big Apple or something.
We absolutely are.
Bring us to the West Coast.
Leading a panel at Melting of the Heads. So
yeah, so that's got me pretty excited. I mean, I don't have much planned beyond that. You know, I got 4 babies. My son, my littlest one, just made 1 in August.
Cool.
So I really like to spend as much, like every waking hour when I'm not working or doing whatever, I'm helping out with the softball team or coaching their little league, or, you know, taking my little one on walks every day. You know, like you go to the beach, I put my little baby in the thing, we walk up the street a mile or 2. It's really important to have those routines and those connections with your people. You know, that's really what gets me excited. My family may be moving, taking over the old family estate, so that's cool because that'll be an opportunity to kind of expand my breeding program, and put up some new buildings on the property because it's vast. There's like 14 acres, so I can do some new cool stuff over there. Yeah, you can get our seeds still at the seed bank. Seeds here now, Neptune Seed Bank, Goose Seed Bank in Canada, Attic 369 in Paris, France, the Green Affiliates in South Africa. You can link me direct at the nw47@gmail.com and check out a menu. And
At Legends in person.
No, I'm gonna be at Legends. I'm bringing the Terp Trike. We're gonna have hash, swag.
You said there's a seed drop.
I have not been down there in years. I think actually last time I was in LA was for the last chalice, so it's been a minute.
You're doing a seed drop though at Legends, right?
Yes, yeah. We'll be doing the Kraken's seed drop, and in my last years that I haven't dropped yet, it's a whole bunch of we're calling it OMG. I think we're gonna call it OMG. It's coffee times GMO. And I've got some other stuff that, you know, nobody's seen yet, and we'll have it there. So
that's
cool. I'm excited to get my hands dirty on some food, just that kind of stuff.
Oh, bro, and the food. We went and did the tasting all in one day. We did the brunch tasting first, and then we did the dinner tasting after. Fucking fire! So just such good food, man. I can't wait. So it's coming together, man. It's definitely there's some surprises. There's some cool ass stuff. Like the whole thing about taking the seed breeders and making sure that they had more of a nice big lounge area to kind of chill in, and then like area right close by where the 2 booths are, where you can go in and talk to 2 seed breeders in each one. It's like it's a little better setup. So
yeah, I think
we're glad. It'll be fun.
I would love to. I'm just gonna planting a seed. You know me. But I think it would be really neat to take, I always thought when I got into this, it would open doors where I could do some kind of world tour and take my kids with me, and they could go to all these different countries. I mean, people have been growing my seeds literally on every continent. But I think it'd be really neat, especially like, the North African stuff. Take a trip and go see these places and go connect with people, and maybe we make a movie out of it. Bring the kids along. and just kind of have this whole experience. And I don't know. It's just I'm planting the seed.
Put it out there. You put it out in the universe.
Put it
bro.
in the universe, bro. Put it out
That's
there.
how it works, bro. For anybody listening,
I love to travel. So
yeah, we're going. It'll be me and Addison and Kaya and his family. We'll go around the world smoking.
Come on, man. Uncle.
Strains.
Yes, Uncle Jameson.
Absolutely. Kaya, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it, brother.
Having me on. I look forward to seeing you guys down in sunny California.
We'll see you soon. Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk to you soon.